Well, hello there, and welcome back to another video. Today, I've got my full-on spoiler review for Avengers Infinity War. And let this be your final warning. Please don't watch this video unless you've seen Infinity War or you really don't care about hearing about all the spoilers. So Thanos and his children roam the universe to acquire the final 4 Infinity Stones: power, time, soul, and mind. This will enable Thanos to fulfill his lifetime ambition to destroy 50% of the population, because in his opinion this will allow the remaining half to prosper. Only the Avengers and friends stand in his way. And the first thing I have to say is, wow, what a movie. As I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, love or hate Marvel and everything they stand for, you have to appreciate how they put in the hours, or the years, 10 of them to be exact, to be able to realise and release this film. And although you did need to know quite a lot of Marvel backstory going in, the plot was kept so simple, I think deliberately, that this is a feasible jump-on point for new or casual Marvel viewers. Plot points that could have been so convoluted and soaked in legends from the comics were stripped back and kept simple, I think, to make it accessible for new viewers. And if you haven't seen a Marvel movie before, or you have and haven't liked it, then I definitely tell you to try this one, as it definitely gives you a taste for the entire franchise. But we'll break down the final plot details in a bit. First up, let's talk about the headline, the deaths, or should I say deaths. And there were a lot of them. So many, in fact, that I had to go and see the film again before making this video because I totally lost track the first time. So many to keep track of, in fact, that I've created this handy wall of death. All of the deaths. Aside from 3, that final sequence where Thanos clicks his fingers and half of the universe, including half the Avengers, ceased to be, it had me shook. Or at least it would have done if it left out just a few crucial people. Because some of the people who died have not only got movies announced, but they've started filming them. I appreciate how far in advance these movies are planned and made. It's the only way that a studio can even release 3 movies in 1 year. But Marvel have deliberately not released the titles of certain upcoming movies. As I said, it would spoil who lives and who dies. So surely at the very least they could have left out Guardians, Black Panther, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange from the people that faded away at the end. As now we know they're going to come back in some way, it really ruins the effect of anyone fading away. Having said that, I do think the reasoning behind those characters fading away is quite clear. Kevin Feige, the big producer behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously wanted to strip it back for the next movie to the original Avengers clan. As it's been confirmed that after Infinity War Part 2 next year, the Avengers are going to have a new lineup with new faces. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about, let me know it down in the comments and I'll do a whole video on it. But quickly on the topic of Black Panther, that movie took the world by storm when it came out earlier this year. And you have to remember that Avengers 3 and even Avengers 4 were filmed back to back before Black Panther even came out. And again, the big producer Kevin Feige admitted in a recent interview that no one at Marvel expected Black Panther to do as well as it did. And I think if you've seen Infinity War, that much is clear, as they practically have killed him off as a character. So to sum up, as some of the characters are confirmed to come back, it makes all of the other deaths pretty meaningless. So the only thing to be sad about these fading away deaths is that it means they probably won't be in the majority of Infinity War Part 2. I for one am devastated that Marvel has chosen to take away some crucial Tom Holland screen time from me. I'm offended. But we'll talk about the sequel in a bit. What about the proper deaths? Well, we've got Loki and Idris Elba's character right at the beginning, followed by Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy, who was thrown off a cliff. I really like Loki as a character, but his death right at the beginning was great. It really set the tone for the whole film. It said, here are the baddies, they mean business, nothing is off limits, let's go. And it made watching this movie for the first time so thrilling, as you had no idea what was going to happen or who was going to go. Now, there's already speculation that Loki isn't actually dead, and judging by Marvel history, that could well be the case. But of course, I'd love to hear your opinion and reaction to the deaths in the film. Please type along with your thoughts as we go through this review. Now let's talk specifically about the characters, and I've ordered them from my best to worst. And my favourite character in the movie was Thanos. I know, right? If you told me going in that I'd end up loving the big purple guy, I'd have just laughed in your face. But as I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, I think Marvel have finally cracked villains. Because you need to understand why they are doing what they're doing. And for Thanos, they kept it pretty simple. Not enough resources, kill half of the population at random, the other half lived the life of Riley. Bit of a psychopath, and actually a friend said to me after the movie, if you think about it, he's got a point. But halfway through the film, I wouldn't go as far as to say I was on Thanos' side, but I was tallying up my least favourite Avengers and getting ready to pass over their addresses. The man likes bubbles. The first time he turned Star-Lord's bullets into bubbles, I was like, fair play. You do you. But when he did it again, I was like, yes, Thanos, be a fan of the foam. Don't come for him. But more broadly, when it came to using his glove, I'm not sure they were quite imaginative enough. Like, it's clearly set up that each stone has a different influence. And when he used them, they obviously tried to colour code the zappy lasers. Completely lost on me as I'm colourblind, but I appreciated them trying. But I think only the reality stone and the time stone were like properly harnessed in the film, and I'd like to see the others explored a little bit more. Maybe we'll get that in the sequel. Perhaps again it was to keep it simple for new or casual viewers, but at this point I feel like I'm using that as a get out of jail free card for everything bad in this film. As for the children of Thanos, they were all pretty evil and forgettable, with the one exception of Ebony Maw. What a character. I would love to see a film where he is just the stand-alone baddie. And so I'm glad we got some decent screen time of him facing off against Doctor Strange and crew. My only grievance with him is that he just sounded like a bloke. Like, they had all these incredible visual effects for him, and I thought they were really imaginative and creative. And he was so menacing, especially in that shot in the trailer and at the very start of the film where he shushes Thor. But then they didn't put any kind of effect on his voice, and it just sounded a bit weird to me. But on to my favourite hero character, which was Thor. They did such a U-turn in Thor Ragnarok to turn him from, in my opinion, the dullest Avenger to the funniest and apparently my favourite. And he's given so much to do in this film and out in space, which again, in my opinion, is where I think he needs to be, as he just seems so overpowered compared to the other Avengers. And you know what? He fitted right in with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the banter on the ship between him and Star-Lord, and then when he went off with Rocket and kept calling him a rabbit, and I loved at the end he was like, I made friends with a tree. I relate. But as for the sequence on the world where weapons are made, at the time I was like, meh, cool, Thor needs a new hammer. But the more I think about it, it feels like a copy of that sequence in the second Hobbit film where they're trying to relight the furnace. And I've seen a lot of comments about that and the Vermeer Soul Stone sequence, saying that they were really random, or they could have created a better way using Marvel Legends and the comics. But again, I feel like these sequences were put in there to make the film accessible to new viewers. And when I watched it for a second time, I have actually changed my opinion. And I think they were fun enough sequences to pass. But if you're commenting along, I'd love to know what you think specifically about those two sequences. Were you shook when Darth Maul turned up, or whatever he's called from the first Captain America film? And were you mad at how convenient it was that Gamora, the one person who needed to go with Thanos to the Soul Stone place, happened to be the one person who went with him to the Soul Stone place? But anyway, let's talk about the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think they fitted really well into this movie. I loved all the space stuff. They just managed to keep their humour and their style, even when they were split up and put with other people. And maybe more so than in the Guardians films, their individual talents really shone. Apparently Guardians director James Gunn actually wrote all the dialogue for the Guardians in this movie, and if it makes sense that that's the case, as that would help to explain how they managed to retain so much of their style. But if Thor isn't in the next Guardians film, I'm gonna be mad. I'm gonna be cross. I'm gonna call it now. And generally kudos to their creators for making characters that really stood out among the other and probably better known Marvel properties. Next up, Doctor Strange and Tony Stark. Doctor Strange was such an okay movie for me, but if all goes to plan, he's probably got another 2 movies coming up, so there's no surprise really that he was giving so much screen time and so much to do in this film. And he was awesome compared to some of the others whose talents are literally shooting or zapping people with lasers. His powers were imaginative and just really cool. And I will say, Marvel, I am here for a Doctor Strange sequel. Never thought I would say that. As for Iron Man, his CGI looked a little bit dated to me, and the movement of his suit, I think because he was stood next to Doctor Strange, it just looked old. But whenever we just had Robert Downey Jr., I thought it was great. Tony Stark is such a strong character. I think it makes sense why this entire Marvel Cinematic Universe rests on his shoulders. And somehow I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in the next movie. But briefly, can we talk about Spider-Man? Now, full disclosure, going in, Spider-Man was probably my favourite Marvel character, and he had a few funny lines, but I think the reason Homecoming worked is he's at his best when he's downscaled. He's in a high school, he's relatable, and he's low-key. So when he's in space and in some fancy pants suit with loads of arms, it just lost something for me. Did anyone else feel that? Like, he's another one of these people who have got 2 more films in the pipeline, and I can't help but wonder how they are going to ground him again after such a huge shake-up in this movie. But I really hope they do. Next up, Black Panther and co. Wow. In one movie, they managed to establish such a unique presence that in this movie, I wanted more from them. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, Disney obviously didn't know that their film was going to do this well, or as well as it has done, or they would have given them more to do in this film. And I think that much is clear in the marketing of this film, where they release so many stills, including Black Panther, even though he has such a small part in the actual film. T'Challa, fair play, I like him, but Shuri and Okoye are just my phase. As I mentioned, they finished filming Infinity War Part 2 in January this year, but it is not too late for reshoots if you want to put a little bit more of certain characters in the next film. Hint, hint. And it was Black Panther fading away at the end that probably evoked the biggest reaction at my screen. But again, it's pretty meaningless as we know he's going to be coming back. But anyway, who didn't I like so much? Well, by process of elimination, the Earth team. Headed up by Cap, Black Widow, War Machine, Falcon, etc. Compared to the spectacle and freshness of the other characters, whenever we were with these guys, it just felt really dated to me. Like they were just cameos or like fan favourites. And so I didn't relate to their entire storyline. I was like, just destroy the stone, witch lady. Like, go love some other robot. Wall-E is part of Disney. See if he's free. Vision and Scarlet Witch's romance was just so dull to me that I was hoping Thanos was going to enter at any moment and just throw a moon at them so they would get out of my lives. Bit harsh. But I've got to say the worst character for me in this film was the Hulk and Mark Ruffalo. And I actually feel quite bad. I rewatched Thor Ragnarok this morning and he's pretty good in it. And because of a messy licensing deal with Universal, he's never really going to have his own movie. So he got so much screen time in this movie, but I feel like he's just bumbled about trying to be the comic relief, but I really didn't find him very funny. And by the end, when he was in the Hulkbuster armor, I just felt a bit embarrassed. Like the VFX was just so bad. I think when the film comes out in digital release, you're going to be seeing a lot of memes of the very last scene that he's in. And next time you see the movie, watch out for it. Right at the end, you just have Mark Ruffalo vaguely floating around where he should be. But let's briefly talk about Infinity War Part 2. Hopefully you stuck around for the end credit sequence where we saw Nick Fury fading away just after paging Captain Marvel. But before that, we've got the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie coming out in a few months. It's apparently set before the events of Infinity War, and it might explain why Ant-Man wasn't in Infinity War, perhaps because he's under house arrest following his part in Civil War. But I expect there's going to be a pretty good end credit sequence, maybe hinting at what's going to happen in Infinity War Part 2. I say maybe hinting, that's literally the only thing it could be. Then the Captain Marvel movie, which is coming out next year, has now been moved to March 2019. I think it was originally in January, but now it's notably 2 months before Infinity War Part 2, which means I imagine the second Captain Marvel hits cinemas, the Infinity War marketing train is going to start up. Set in the 90s and an origin story, the Captain Marvel movie is probably going to set the scene for her to come and save the day, I'm guessing in something that's quite Wonder Woman-esque. She's supposed to be the new Tony Stark, heading up the future Avengers lineup, so there is a lot of pressure on this one movie, and they better get her right. As for Infinity War Part 2, it'll be coming up around this time next year. As we've talked about, we can guarantee that certain characters who have already got movies coming out are going to come back, but it looks like the film is going to centre around the original Avengers lineup. And to be honest, as contracts are up, I think they're going to kill off one of the original big three, either Cap, Thor, or Iron Man. After all, they've each now had their trilogies, so they will only be making cameos in future films. So perhaps it is time to hand over the Avengers gauntlet to another generation. But that was a lot of me talking. I'd love to hear what you thought about this movie. And what do you think is going to happen next? I can't wait to read all of your thoughts and your theories in the comments down below. And that is where I'm going to leave the show for today. If you want to watch more of me, as always, I will leave another video around here, and all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.